Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 1.1 continued, where we're going to be talking about proportional reasoning again. So this is example number 3 in the second part of your notes, and here we're going to be taking a bit of a deeper look, or more of the application of proportional reasoning, because we're going to be looking at some word problems. And one thing that's really important about word problems is that you need to create a strategy, because word problems, they can tell you a lot of unessential information and can really throw some people off. So I'm going to show you a strategy in this video that I found works for a lot of people, works for myself included, and hopefully it'll work with you too. If not, come see me if you have another strategy. I would love to learn what else you guys are doing. So step number 1 is to actually read the problem. We're not going to do anything yet with it. We're just going to read the problem and get a sense of what we're trying to look for. So engines that require you to mix oil with fuel to provide lubrication are called two-stroke engines. A faller at a logging site needs to refill a chainsaw's fuel can. The ratio of gasoline that is needed is 40 parts of gasoline to 1 part of oil. The chainsaw's fuel can holds 8 liters of gasoline. How much oil should be added to the gasoline to obtain the correct ratio? So first step was to read the problem. And second step is, I guess you have to determine what are they asking us. And so to do that, they actually have it summed up. It's usually at the end of your word problem. And if you look at this last sentence here, it says, how much oil should be added to the gasoline to obtain the correct ratio? So here we want to know how much oil should be added. So now we've identified what we need to know, or what we're looking for. And now we need to go back and reread that problem and find out what information they give us to solve this question. So you take this step by step. So start with your first sentence. And what you're going to do is, if you think that it's essential information, you're going to underline what you think is important. Or if you think that it's just some useless information that's kind of great, but not really necessary for the problem, you can just cross it off. So our first sentence reads, engines that require you to mix oil with fuel to provide lubrication are called two-stroke engines. So ask yourself, is that sentence right there going to tell us how much oil we need to mix with our gas? No, it doesn't. It kind of tells us, the definition of what a two-stroke engine is, but it's not really actually important. So let's cross that sentence off. And so let's move on to our next sentence. So a faller at a logging site needs to refill a chainsaw's fuel can. That one there still doesn't tell us about how much oil we need. So once again, we can cross that off. And our next sentence says, the ratio of gasoline that is needed is 40 parts of gasoline to 1 part of oil. So this sentence here is actually very important for our question. And if you guys remember, we're talking about proportional reasoning, and that's usually where we're comparing two rates. And so this right here is telling us we have a ratio, or a rate. And here it's telling us we have 40 parts of gasoline to 1 part of oil. So this one here, it's telling us we have a rate. And that right there, you can actually create your first fraction. So remember, with your fraction, you just take one of your units. So you have 40 parts of gasoline. So you have 40 parts. I'm just going to abbreviate that with a P. And gasoline with just gas. And then we're going to create a fraction. And on the bottom will be our other units. So we have 1 part of oil. So say 1 P oil. So that's what we have for our first little bit of information there. I'm just going to separate this with an equal sign. Now let's move on to our next sentence. So here it says the chainsaw's fuel can hold 8 liters of gasoline. So this sentence here is actually very important, because this actually tells us how much gasoline actually goes into that fuel can. So the previous sentence told us how much mixture we should have, and this one here tells us the exact amount. So we know that we have 8 liters of 8 liters of gasoline, but we don't know the oil. And when we don't know something, in math, we always like to represent that with a variable, and I'll just rewrite my units in there. So we have 8 liters of gasoline with X liters of oil. And so from here, we can now actually go ahead and solve for our variable. We have two fractions that are equal to one another, and we have one missing variable. So remember, this here is really the basic setup of any proportional reasoning question. So now to go ahead and solve, we're going to use the technique that I showed you in the last video, which is called cross multiplication. So you start with the numerator or the top of your first fraction and draw an arrow going down to the denominator of your second fraction. And same thing with our, with our other numerator and denominator, draw an arrow there going from the denominator of the first fraction to the numerator of your second fraction. And so as we remember, each of those arrows indicate multiplication. And for sake of clearing up some more clutter, from here on out, I'm actually just going to write the numbers, and I won't be writing the units. The units were really essential for setting up the question, and now up to this point, we don't need that anymore. We can go ahead and just use numbers to solve. So here we have 40 times x, which we can rewrite as 40x, and we have 1 times 8. So we can go ahead and clear up this multiplication. If you want to skip that step, that's absolutely fine. So you have 40x is equal to 1 times 8 is 8. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to be solving for a variable, so we want x by itself. And right now we're at 40 times x. So in order to get rid of 40 times x, we want it to be just x. You're going to do the opposite operation. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So you're going to divide by the number that's connected with x. So you're going to divide by 40 on your left side and make sure this is an equal equation. There's an equal sign. So what you do to one side, you do to the other. So 40 divided by 40 is just 1. So what we're left with is 1x, or we write just x, and we have 8 divided by 40. Now, there's two options you can do here. You can either do the reduced fraction, or you can do a decimal. So when you do the reduced fraction, you can divide your numerator and your denominator by a common factor of 8. And what you'd be left with is 1 over 5. Or, which is actually my preferred method, is using a decimal. And with decimals, when you punch that into your calculator, if you can do it off by yourself, you would get 0.2. Now we're not actually quite done this question yet because this is a word problem. And with word problems, you have to answer them with a sentence. That's not an option. And if you struggle with answering word problems and you're not quite sure what exactly you should say, we'll go back to that question that they were asking you. So here it said, how much oil should be added to the gasoline to obtain the correct ratio? So what I usually like to do is I turn that question into a statement. And also one other little tidbit is, I guess in this situation, we were told that we were dealing with a faller at a logging site. So I'm just going to say that the faller needs and 0.2, and make sure you tell me what it is. One thing that's really important is you need those units, because how do I know you're not talking about the gasoline instead of the oil, or how do I know we're not dealing with pints or ounces, or even say kilograms? I don't know, so it might come with kilograms. So make sure you tell me those units. So here it was liters of oil. So the faller needs 0.2 liters of oil. And for now, this is actually a good enough sentence. I know it's not 100% complete, but for now, I think this will be a really great starting point for us in our course. So this concludes our video, so thank you so much for watching, and let me know if you guys have any questions.